Hello and welcome to the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. It is finally May. That's right. My name is Rob Peeters and I am coming at you live. Well, somewhat live, pseudo live. It's a podcast, so it's not really live, but I like to treat it like a radio show. Anyway, I'm coming at you from Indianapolis, where for the next month, all of the attention in the racing world is pretty much going to be focused on my hometown, which is really always the fun time. All eyes are on basically my backyard. And joining me from Charlotte, which will shortly be the center of the attention of the NASCAR world, is Josh Roller. And we make up the two halves of the Rob and Roller podcast. So let's go ahead and start and saying we have a lot to talk about this week. Let me tell you that. There was a lot going on. It was a packed weekend of racing all over the world. I mean, we had Formula One, we had NASCAR, we had two IndyCar races. Holy cow, that doesn't happen very often. We used to get a lot of doubleheaders. I don't think we'll have another doubleheader again until about Detroit. So until next month will we have another doubleheader in the IndyCar Series, and maybe depending on the outcome of Toronto, we might have some more doubleheaders coming at you. But we'll see about that. Nothing's been officially announced on that front yet. So yeah, let's go ahead here and jump into the news today because we've got a lot to talk about. But I want to go ahead here and start the show first and foremost with a bit of some unfortunate news. And this is going to be a little bit difficult for me to talk about, but it's important. And we just need to go through it because we need to take a moment and remember the reality of life and what we all go through at some point in our lives is very unfortunate, but I don't know. Anyway, so we have sadly lost two members of our racing family over the weekend. On Sunday afternoon, it was announced that Eric McClure, former NASCAR Xfinity Series driver and nephew of Larry McClure, who was co-owner of Morgan McClure Motorsports team in the NASCAR Winston Cup and Nextel Cup series for a long time. He passed away. He died at the age of 42. Apparently, I guess, sometime between Saturday night and Sunday morning. No details were released, so we're not going to speculate on anything, but we just want to wish all of our thoughts and prayers out to the McClure family. He leaves behind a fiance and 7 daughters. 7 daughters. That are all names all start with M. By the way, I don't know if anyone ever caught that. I'm not making fun of the guy. I'm literally just commending him on the absolute commitment to naming your children with starting with the letter M. I love that. Always applaud people who could commit to that because I could never do it. But anyway, just very sad to hear about that. The news shocked me. I mean, Eric McClure has always been someone who has been talked about very highly by a lot of racing personnel in the racing family. Unfortunately, he had a bit of a run-in with the law over the past year or two, but it seemed like he was getting things back together. It looked like he was working on himself, but we did have health issues. I think he was being treated for kidney failure. At least this was reported about last year, I think. No real updates on that since then. And like I said, no cause of death has been announced, so we're not going to speculate. But just a sad and unfortunate situation all around. 42 years old. He's really young to go. It's really, really rough. But let's just stop and remember the good times and remember the good memories of Eric McClure, because I know that there's a lot of people out there in the racing community that have good memories of him. And then I'm going to move on here, and this is probably the hardest news for me to announce on this show. And I know we're starting it off on a somber note, and I apologize for that, but this stuff needs to you got to get through this stuff, and as a broadcaster and as a podcaster and as a reporter and everything, this is the stuff that you got to do no matter how much you might hate it. But it was announced this morning, on Monday morning, that 3-time Indianapolis 500 winner Bobby Unser has also died at the age of 87. And Bobby Unser is a legend in his own right. There's nobody out there that I can think of right now that will have as lasting of an impact on auto racing as I think Bobby Unser did. I never was alive to see him race, but I was alive to see his impact on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, on the Indianapolis 500, on the city, the state, everything, and I had the wonderful opportunity to talk with him back in about 2016 or 17. And I'll just never forget that and I want to tell this story here because I want to remember Bobby. I always called him Uncle Bobby, even though he wasn't my uncle, and I'd only talked to him for a short time, but the short time I talked to him, he sure as hell felt like an uncle. It sure as hell felt like I was talking to an uncle on the phone. It seemed like I was talking to somebody I'd known my entire life. And I remember I emailed him because I was working on a story. It's an award-losing article. It's an award-losing paper, I promise you. I did not win the award. It's unfortunate. I should have won the award, but, stuff happens. Board, politics, what have you. I don't know. I was told it was politics, but whatever. Point is, I just emailed Bobby Unser one day, out of the blue. I just emailed him. I shot him an email. I didn't even think he would answer it. I honestly thought, I figured Bobby Unser was, he passed away at 87. This was like 4 years ago, so he's in his mid 80s, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, he's probably not going to answer his email right away, or if at all. And sure enough, by the next morning, I wake up and I have an email in my inbox from Bobby Unser, and it's it's in all bold font, Times New Roman, all caps, at about 19-point font. And I read it in his voice. It said, "Well, Rob, yeah, I think we could get this thing done. Give me a call at this number around this time, and I'll have a chat with you." And that was it. The rest was history. I gave him a call. I cold called him, and we had to have talked for about 2 hours. And I was really only asking him maybe a couple of questions. I didn't want to keep him long. I really, truthfully, honestly, I didn't want to keep him long. I didn't know how busy he was or what he was doing, and I guess he wasn't that busy or whatever, but he was just sitting at home in Albuquerque, and I guess he had a great time talking to me, because when he answered the phone, he said, "Hey, Rob, how you doing?" Best Bobby Unser impression. I can't do a very good one, but he answered the phone like I was his long-lost nephew or something. I mean, it was truthfully a wonderful experience, and one of the best moments probably of my young journalistic career is being able to have a conversation with Bobby Unser. And then, the best part about him too was he would come up into the media center, man, every May, and he would come up into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Media Center. Robin Miller would be with him. Steve Shuck would be with him. And of course they were. They've made outstanding, heart-wrenching articles on Bobby Unser today. If you haven't read them, I recommend you. But he would just sit right there, and you could walk right on up to him and ask him anything you wanted, and he'd talk to you for as long as you wanted him to talk to you. I mean, he was the nicest person I've probably ever met in racing. I've met a lot of nice people in racing. I've met a lot of very kind-hearted people. I've met Brendan Gaughan, and that man is a pillow pet, and he will talk to you about anything you want. Brendan Gaughan will shoot the breeze with you. He doesn't care. He'll have to be at driver intros in 5 minutes, and he'll just sit down and take selfies with you and ask you how your day's going. That's how Brendan Gaughan would be, and I bet you that's how Bobby Unser would be too, back in the day at least, because there was just nobody more friendly than Bobby Unser, and he would go around and, like I said, even if you didn't know him and he didn't know you, greet you like he knew you. And I think that's what's really special about him. And the racing world lost one of the best, one of the brightest, one of the kindest. There's not enough words that I can use to describe Bobby Unser and how I feel about him. So today has just obviously been a tough day for me. I have been very candid about, depression has been kicking my butt lately. And, this didn't make it any easier, but having this opportunity to come on here and share my stories about Uncle Bobby is really important, because that whole interaction with him meant the world to me. And I wanted to share that, because when he called me and we talked. It was probably the first time, and I had covered the race for 2 years up until this point. But it was honestly probably the first time that I actually felt like someone took me as a legitimate journalist and not just some kid who got lucky. And that's how I've always felt. Maybe I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I don't know. That's a topic for another day, but I'll never forget that feeling, and I just appreciate everything he's done. So, Bobby Unser, you will be missed. You will absolutely be missed by me, and I'm sure by race fans all over the world. Thank you for your contributions to the racing world. Thank you for your contributions to just life in itself. This is all off the cuff here right now. I'm struggling for words because this is really hard for me, but I just want to say thank you to Bobby Unser. So, Bobby Unser passed away at the age of 87. Eric McClure passes away at the age of 42. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families and friends right now, and we wish that the healing would commence as soon as possible. And with that said, I think, the show must go on here, and our show as well must go on. So, as we take moments to remember Eric and Bobby today, I think, we should just continue on here with the show and try and have a good time like they would want us to, and report and talk about the sport that they love just as much as we love it. So let's start off here. Rob's Racing Report on this episode of the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast, Season 3, Episode 12. Or Episode 13, I think this is. If I'm correct, I don't know. Start off with Formula One here. We have some news relating to the calendar. The Canadian Grand Prix has been canceled for the 2021 F1 season, and it has been replaced by the Turkish Grand Prix at Istanbul Park. Once again, going back to the Turkey, which is great because that's a great racetrack. Josh and I were just talking about it before the show, just how much we like that track. It's great, classic track. Good to see it back, but and it's not the worst thing in the world, Canadian Grand Prix getting canceled, because they have renewed their contract for the next, I think, 3 years, 3 or 4 years, maybe even 5. I can't remember. I know that they renewed their contract. I just didn't write it down.
They got a 2-year extension. I'm not sure when. It's kind of questionable how, not to butt in, but it's kind of questionable. Like, are these 2 years that they've missed rolling over with the contract?
It's possible. It's possible. That wouldn't be a bad thing, because I think they still have 2 years on the schedule, and it wasn't their fault the race was canceled. It's the government's fault. You blame the government for stuff like that. You can't blame the track. So, what are you going to do? I think that's fine. But heck, even then, 2 extra years at the Canadian Grand Prix is always good, because that's one of the classic, memorable Formula One races. So, never will use that at all. Even if we do get Istanbul Park, which is always a plus and a treat. Heck, if it rains again, we're in for an even bigger treat. We'll see. Hey, did you see this past weekend at Portugal? We got it was reported over the past week, and then we saw it over the past weekend, that Callum Ilott is an Alfa Romeo driver. He's a reserve driver, and he got to run FP1 for Alfa Romeo this past weekend in Portugal. That was really cool. A sad compensation for not getting the drive I think a lot of us felt he deserved. But hey, take the test drive. Take what you can get, man. Show that you're faster. I think he was faster than Mazepin in free practice. Probably wouldn't be that hard, because I know the Alfa Romeo is faster than the Haas, so it's probably not a fair comparison. But
could we see him take over for one of the 2 Alfa Romeo drivers if they don't perform later this year?
I don't know. We'll see. Gio's not been doing terrible. Gio's not bad. A lot of people count out Gio just because they compare him to Kimi, but Kimi makes more mistakes than Gio does sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
So I think, in terms of Alfa Romeo, if they really want to dump one driver, I think they have to. If they want to dump one driver, I think they have to dump both. I think that's pretty much the way it's going to have to work.
Yeah. They
can't dump Gio and then keep Kimi, and then Kimi makes more mistakes than Gio. What are you going to do? You can't. If you dump Kimi, then everybody goes up into a fit. Most of Formula One fans go into a haywire fit, right? You become the most hated team on the grid behind Haas. You don't want that to happen either.
Take over Haas.
Yeah. It's a messy situation, but it's just too early to talk about silly season. It's only May, guys. It's only May. It's too early to talk about silly season.
Only 3 races in.
3 races in. Silly season's too far away. Let's move on to some NASCAR news here. GMS Racing has announced that Rafael Lessard will no longer drive for the team after a sponsorship fallout. So Rafael Lessard actually posted on Twitter after this news was announced. Basically, he had a sponsorship deal fall through, and he doesn't have enough funding to continue the rest of the season in GMS's trucks, so he's just going to take the rest of the season off and work to fund 2022. And GMS, I guess, will have a ride for him if he's able to put that funding together. So that's a good plus, I mean, you can't fault GMS for that, but you got to wonder, they're still running basically almost 5 full-time trucks.
Yeah.
And they can't fund.
I think the 24 will be at Darlington. But if you remember right, this was when they announced Rafael Lessard to the 24 truck last year. It was only for 10 races.
Yeah.
And then it was announced that he will drive the full season when new funding was found. And that's whatever has transpired is unfortunate for him because I think he was getting better. We saw progress in the past weeks out of that 24 truck.
You have to have more seat time. I mean, the only way to progress is to have seat time. And with no practice qualifying, some of these young guys that really need that seat time to progress, they need to be out there running full seasons.
Agreed. Definitely stinky there. Did you see who's coming back racing?
Yeah, Eric Darnell's coming back.
Yeah,
he's coming back. He's going to run. Is it with GMS here or is it Nice?
Nice 45 truck for Nice.
Okay. So he's going to run the 45 truck for Nice. And if you saw the throwback paint scheme, oh boy, Northern Tool is back. It's the same exact truck that he used to drive all the time. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I love that. That makes me so happy to see. I loved those trucks. And then it's amazing that Eric Darnell just takes almost 10-year sabbatical from the sport.
Right.
And then there's all these drivers taking these long sabbaticals from NASCAR and then coming back for one-off truck races. You get Bill Lester earlier this year, comes back out of nowhere. Huh?
Had James Busher.
James Busher is another one who just...
Trevor Bayne last year.
Trevor Bayne came... Well, was that part of the non-compete clause that he had with Roush, I think?
I have no idea.
Or was he just couldn't find a ride? I wasn't sure.
I venture to say it was the latter.
That's what I was going to say. I wasn't sure. I had heard something about a non-compete clause that Trevor Bayne had with Roush, but I'm not sure.
That would stink as a driver, especially when you were let go.
That would be terrible as a driver, yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. If that was the case,
had a terrible lawyer who was just like, yeah, we could put that in the contract. It's not like he's going anywhere after Roush, right? He probably wasn't, let's be honest with you. Yeah. Not sorry to Trevor Bayne fans. I know that there's still a lot of them. Trevor Bayne is a very popular driver, especially since 2011. Who wasn't on the Trevor Bayne train in 2011? Let's be honest. Who didn't hop on that bandwagon for at least the first 6 or 7 races that he ran in 2011?
Yeah.
Most people hopped on that bandwagon, right?
Hopped on that and strapped in,
and then I was one. I hopped on, and then when he wrecked out of the Pepsi 400 later that year, or the Coke Zero 400, whatever it was called by that time, when he wrecked out of the Daytona July race, that was when I hopped off the train. I was like, yeah, this kid's a one-hit wonder. I'm out. I'm back to watching Casey Kane finish 13th every week.
But forever he will be a Daytona 500 champion.
He will, and he'll forever have one of the Wood brothers. So,
yep.
Hey, he's got that to his credit. No one can take that away from him, and that's all. Bobby Labonte almost had one. Could you imagine if Bobby Labonte had passed him? Could you imagine if Juan Montoya had passed him?
Bobby was in the 47 that race, right?
Yeah, he was pushing Trevor Bayne.
Yeah. And Montoya was in the 42. Man, you could have had really interesting winners come out.
Carl Edwards was there too. It was Carl Edwards, David Gill. If I recall correctly, I think it was Carl Edwards, David Gilliland in the Taco Bell 38 for FRM, and then you had Bayne being pushed by Labonte, and then I think it was Kurt Busch maybe and Juan Montoya that were working together that were coming up on I don't know. I've replayed that finish and so many times, and I'll just remember it was the
top
call Darrell Waltrip ruined.
This is the top 10 of that Daytona 500, and then you can move on. Trevor Bayne, Carl Edwards, David Gilliland, Bobby Labonte, Kurt Busch, Juan Pablo Montoya.
I was right.
Regan Smith, Kyle Busch, Paul Menard, Mark Martin.
Okay, so yeah, it was mainly that top 5 though. Those were the main cars that I think were in major contention for the win, and I thought Carl had a chance to get it there until the last corner. Basically, I was like, man, Carl might get this. And then when Bayne slammed the door coming to the trial, I was like, holy cow, he's gonna do this. 2011. I'm sorry to get off topic. 2011 was crazy year for racing, man. The craziest stuff happened in 2011. I mean,
I'll talk about a little bit of it later.
I know. I'm excited for it. 2011 was such a crazy year. IndyCar was insane. Formula One was basically the Vettel show, but it was still fun to watch. And then you had NASCAR doing basically whatever the hell they were. Those super speedway races, a 4-wide finish at Talladega. Mm-hmm. David Reagan wins the July race at Daytona.
Yep.
And then teammates Jeff Burton and Clint Boyer betray each other on the last lap of Talladega that year. And it was crazy. The Xfinity Series was crazy that year too. Or the Nationwide Series was called that. Even the Truck Series is Eric Darnell going back to that. Holy cow. I'm on a nostalgia trip. I went on a nostalgia trip last night posting about old IRL. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
It was a 4 a.m. rant. I know.
Oh, I didn't see a 4 a.m. I was sound asleep.
NASCAR man posted the finish of the 2002 IRL race at Texas that Jeff Ward won. Ooh. My man Jeff Ward in the number 9 Target Chevrolet. It was a Chevrolet at the time, and they didn't run Infinity engines. It was a G-Force chassis, though. It was a G-Force chassis. Beat Al Unser Jr. to the line with help from drumroll, the man and the myth, the legendary.
No one does talk. Yes, okay, that's where I mentioned him. So that was the last time I talked about him. I've heard his name was last June on this podcast.
I just want to be like, someday I want to have a survey or like a game show idea. The name
that would be that sounds like a social media idea.
Old IRL driver or name I made up.
That's good. We should probably move on to the next point.
Okay, let's move on. Colleague Racing is coming to Cup. Colleague Racing owners Matt Colling confirmed on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio this week that the move to the NASCAR Cup Series is a done deal for next season, with driver and sponsorship announcements coming at a later date. No idea who that's going to be, but I have a guess.
We all have a guess.
I have a guess. I'm excited for that guess because I think Colleague is probably going to push this driver to their best, and that's going to be good. Whoever this driver is, I'm sure people are thinking about 2 or 3 different guys right now. I'm thinking about a guy who's currently in Cup, but I don't know who Josh is thinking.
I've got like 3 or 4 names like everyone else. Like I think it could be. I think you could put these names down, cover your eyes, and do a pin thing, and you'd be just as accurate as anyone else's guess.
What if it's randomly Matt Kenseth? No? What if it's randomly Greg Biffle and they come back to run the 16?
Not going to be either of those drivers. I can tell you that. Right.
I didn't think it would be, but I like making it up. Like if they do enter with car number 16, like they did this past week or 2 weekends ago with Kaz Gralla, it should. Yeah. They should hire Greg Biffle. He's not doing anything, and he still can win. We've seen that he could still win.
Yeah.
Bring back the Biffmeister.
It will be someone who is in their stable currently.
I know.
Or was in their stable a year ago and could potentially be in their 4th car at a later race this year in the Xfinity Series.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
What's that next point?
Austin Hill, a championship contender in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series with Hattori Racing Enterprises, and also a former champion of the Truck Series in general, confirmed to the media this past week that he will run select Xfinity Series races with Hattori Racing Enterprises, but which races is unknown at this time. So they don't know what races they're going to run, but they do know that he's going to run some races, which is going to be good. Good for him. And how about this? How about this for a piece of weird news? We do know the All-Star race format, which is also going to be held at the atrocious now Texas Motor Speedway. I'm sorry, Eddie Gossage, I love you. You do a great job for everything in racing. I have appreciated everything you do. Eddie Gossage, if you're listening to this, please, for the love of all that is good, save your racetrack. Please, I want your racetrack to be good again. I loved your racetrack as a kid. I still love it now, but it is so hard to love it because turns 1 and 2 are garbage, and I will talk about that more later. But seriously, you need to fix this because this convoluted All-Star race is not going to help. So let's go over what the heck this thing's going to be. Follow me here. Follow me. I'm going to go by this
attempt to follow what is about to spew out of Rob's mouth.
So the race will feature a total of, and I kid you not, this is the most ridiculous part about it, I think, is 6 rounds. 6 rounds, as opposed to the normal, 3 or 4 we're used to?
Yeah.
We're usually, it's 25, 25, 50 or whatever, or less than that. Or something, I don't know. Or something. I think it's been 10 laps at the end. Yeah, you're right. Which, 20 laps. It needs to be 20 laps. Okay, but anyway, so 6 rounds totaling 100 laps. Seems kind of short, but okay. Starting lineup for round 1 will be determined via a random draw, so no qualifying. Which is a bummer because why can't we go back to the old All-Star qualifying when you had to make 1 lap, make a pit stop, and then make another lap? That was fun. That was cool. That was interesting. That was unique. I want that again. But anyway, that's not happening. We're just going to do a random draw a la the Bud Shootout back in the day. It probably won't be televised on Speed, hosted by Kenny Wallace, unfortunately. But what are you going to do? Then rounds 1 through 4 will be 15 laps each. And then round 5 will be 30 laps. And then the final round will feature a 10-lap shootout. So that's the structure of the race. 6 rounds, 15 laps, 1 through 4, 30 laps round 5, 10-lap final round shootout. Again, I still think it should be 20 laps, but that's beside the point. I'm editorializing. It's a 10-lap shootout. At the beginning, here's how this is what's really weird to me, is instead of just keeping the field order as it is, or at the very least just doing a very basic invert, they're doing this weird thing to determine the lineups for the next, each round. And this doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why would you not just keep the running order or invert them? It seems most logical in every other type of... NASCAR is the only series I know that has a race like this, an All-Star race. So this is the only time that I've ever seen it happen. But most other racing series that have 2 races or have other things like that, they just invert the field. It's a standard invert. You can invert the top 10. You can invert the whole field. Who cares? You can invert the first. You could put the first place driver and the last place driver and have them just switch spots and see what happens. I don't care, but whatever the heck they're doing here is the round 2, they're going to be, the field will be inverted via a random draw. So it will be inverted, but not like the standard invert, like first goes to 10th and et cetera, et cetera. It's just going to be a random draw. So there's just a minimum of 8, a maximum of 12. This will be live on FS1, I'd assume so. The round 2 random draw will also be seen live by fans attending the race on Big Hoss TV. So they're just, every 15 laps, they're just going to redraw. What? This is ridiculous. So, as if that's not hard enough, the beginning of round 3, the entire field will just be inverted as a normal. So, what they should have been doing before this, they're finally doing it after the end of the 15-lap round 3. Or, excuse me, the 15-lap round 2, end of the round 3. And then at the beginning of round 4, they're going to invert it via a random draw again. And then this is what bothers me the most. Round 5. It's a 10-lap shootout.
30. No, that's a 30-lap shootout.
No, round 5.
No, yeah, round 5 is the 30-lap.
Sorry, excuse me, You're right. See, I'm already confused. I'm reading this and I'm already confused.
Yeah.
So starting positions for round 5 will consist of the cumulative finish from rounds 1 through 4. The lowest cumulative finisher starts on the pole. Second lowest starts second, and so forth. So the best car cumulatively from rounds 1 through 4 will basically start at the rear, and the worst ones, the inevitable fan vote winners or whatever.
No, it won't. The lowest cumulative finisher starts on the pole. So if you win all 4 stages, you start first.
Oh, I thought it was. Never mind. I heard lowest, and I thought the guy who finished 20th.
No. If you, it's like golf. The lowest whatever they call that score wins. Here, yeah. See, this is just too convoluted. So
my brain is fried.
Yeah, I'll take over for you here. Not to stomp on your parade. So starting position for round 5.
I need a minute to comprehend all this because I read this when it came out and it didn't make sense, and now I'm rereading again on this podcast and I'm being so unprofessional because I don't even know what the heck I'm talking about.
It's good. So starting position for round 5 will consist of cumulative finish from rounds 1 through 4. Lowest cumulative finisher starts on pole. Second lowest starts second, so forth. All cars must enter pit road for a mandatory 4-tire pit stop during round 5. Then starting positions in the final round are set by the finishing positions of. The starting positions in the final round are set by the finishing order of round 5. So essentially, they're just trying to reward everyone. Finish as high as you can, because then it's going to set you up for the opportunity to win the thing in the 10-lap shootout. Only green flag laps will count. I think that's pretty normal. The fastest team on pit road during the mandatory pit stop will earn $100,000, and the race winner wins $1 million. I'll tell you what. When I read this, I didn't read it initially. Right when it first came out, I forget what I was doing, but I was busy. I think I might have been driving. But I read this. I'm like, what is going on? Why is everyone freaking out over this? And then I read it myself. Yep, I get this. Only Bob Pockrass is going to get what's going on. Okay,
and only Bob. Then he might be lucky if he even able. He's probably gonna have it on a sheet in front of him.
Yeah,
He's gonna rehearse how to answer tweets for the whole week.
Yeah, So Rob, I wrote down here, and I'll say mine first. What are you?
Because my brain is still fried. I am trying to comprehend this, and I am still. My brain is completely fried, and I am trying. I've read this 3-4 times, and even reading it again, I'm still confused. Go ahead and tell your thing, because I think everyone knows where I stand.
Yeah, so I posed the question, what are your true feelings about the All-Star race and what it has become? Here are my true feelings. I love and respect everyone at Speedway Motorsports and the hard work they do to put on this race. There was a conversation by a few different individuals about this, and I think Nate Ryan was one of them who mentioned it. The only way to save this All-Star race, to make it something again, is to go places that we just don't normally go. I know Bowman Gray was thrown out there. Why not go to a dirt track somewhere, run there? Go to another bull ring out west. Go to somewhere that we just don't go to. But my kind of thoughts and feelings are, because I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I don't see Speedway Motorsports saying, you know what, we're going to go Bowman Gray next year, and we're going to say we're going to have a bunch of qualifier races, and we're going to take the 12, 18 cars. We're going to race around Bowman Gray. It's not going to happen. I'm going to drop a dud on here, or a bomb on you. You're going to get a roller bomb, not a stern bomb, but a roller bomb. Scrap the All-Star race, turn it into a points race. This is too complicated. If it's going to be this complicated, you're not going to draw in new fans off of this, or fans who've been watching for a few weeks, or fans who've been watching since Daytona. They're going to get to July, what is going on? I mean, even the All-Star race for MLB, it's just whoever wins the game. It's a regular game, but whoever wins, American League or whatever they do now, or the NBA is this.
You can say what you want about the NBA. The NBA All-Star game, but All-Star Weekend, the NBA All-Star Weekend is still just as entertaining as ever. The dunk contest, the 3-point contest, hell, those are all great. That's what NASCAR had. See, the thing is,
NASCAR had that for years. But
we had a pit stop contest, we had a burnout contest. Why don't we have that stuff? The NBA knows that the All-Star game isn't going to be great because nobody's going to be trying their hardest. No. But they know that, hey, if we put on a dunk contest, if we put on a 3-point contest, people are going to actually try their hardest on this because it's not it's not going to be any more than a standard workout for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Here's another thing that they could do that I know they won't do. NASCAR won't allow it. Put all 3 series together. Take the top 12, take all the winners from All-Star Week Year A to All-Star Week Year B, and I
think it should be wild. You should have 2 wild card as the Xfinity and the Truck Champion.
Yeah, I would. I don't care. It needs to. It's just
you put them in generic cars fielded by whoever, like Hendrick or Roush or whatever, like someone
just have
that's named Rick Ware. You put them in. You put the Xfinity and the Truck Champion in there just as like wild cards.
Yeah,
and see, that would add more value to it than what it currently has. And I didn't want to hijack yours, but I want to say my piece before we waste too much time. I wanted to say my piece real quick. I've always liked the All-Star race. I've always felt like the All-Star race has been really fun. But of course, I think, and this is true, I really and truthfully think since about 2011, we have not had a memorable All-Star race. They have been entirely forgettable. They have been virtually just, I haven't cared as much about, I don't know how to describe this. I don't have enough. I just don't care. I just don't care enough like I did back in the day, because it used to be, you had 3 segments.
Memorable in a few ways. Not to interrupt. 2019 was memorable in a few ways, but other than that, no, I cannot remember All-Star races.
I think back. 2009 was
great,
awesome. 2010 was awesome. 2008 was awesome. I mean, I think 2007, 6, 5, 4, all awesome. Golly, man, 2001 was that crazy one. They took the green flag, the skies opened up, everybody crashed into turn 1, then everybody's on there fixing their cars, repairing them, and then they're like, hey, you could go ahead, it's a non-points race, bring out your backup cars, we're going to restart this race. Okay, everybody goes, brings out their backup cars. Basically, you got a bunch of guys out there in cars that haven't practiced, qualified, done anything, much like they do now, and just throw them out there. And Jeff Gordon, one of the guys who wrecked his car, walked right out there in a backup car he hadn't touched and won the damn thing. Why in the that is what I'm talking about. That is what made the All-Star race exciting. And it was always going for $1 million. Nowadays, I feel like $1 million isn't nearly as much as it used to be.
It's not as much as it was even maybe 10 years ago. It's just if that part of it, and I don't know. Again, I don't know who pays for that $1 million. I mean, obviously, it comes from sponsorship, but it needs to be something like $2 million. It needs to be upped.
It needs the prize money definitely needs to go up for the All-Star race, because at this point, it feels like nobody's really trying.
Yeah, if you have a charter, you are mandated that you have to participate.
Yeah.
Again, I say, not to hijack whatever you had to say, but if you're not going to make it really unique by going to a place, like Bowman Gray, like Hickory, Orange County, somewhere that isn't going to have the opportunity to host a cup race on the regular or ever in its current state, turn into a points race. And just I don't know, just give it $1 million. This is the $1 million race. I don't know.
All right, well, Josh, let's move on here. Let's get rid of all that negative talk. Let's talk about some more negative stuff. Our featured paint scheme this week is going to be a little bit different. Instead of our favorite or the best or the most notable, we're picking the worst 2004 NASCAR Nextel Cup Series paint scheme ever. Josh, go ahead and go first. What's the worst paint scheme you found?
Yes, this one is rather easy for me. It is Terry Labonte's Incredibles Chevrolet he drove at Phoenix. I'm going to type up here. I forgot to pull this up. But it is basically, this is like one of those movie promotion cars. You think it's going to be pretty cool. Typically,
and Terry's driven the Monsters Inc. car he drove in like 2000 or 2001 was really good.
Yeah, whatever year that was, I can't remember now.
That one was really good. So Terry had it. No, actually, this would have been the next year. Kyle Busch Robots car was really good. I remember that one.
Yeah,
remember the movie Robots?
Have been good, or TV show cars that have been good, but this one, imagine this. Okay, this is literally how I think about this. You paint a car black, you put the yellow 5 on, and then you go to your child and say, "Here's a bunch of stickers, put them on the car." That's what they did. Okay, I'm looking at it right now. All right, so it's again all black, yellow trim along the valences. Let's just appreciate valences for like 2 seconds and appreciation over.
I think there's a throwback car coming that actually has a valence painted on. I think awesome. I saw.
That's awesome.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so you got Mr. Incredible on the hood and the Incredibles logo and the Kellogg's logo and then the Incredibles wordage. You have the mom on the driver's side, the daughter on the passenger side. It's just too plain. It's horrible. Again, it's like they took a test car and just put decals on it. That's what they did here. For something that could have been really cool, like they could have literally incorporated the Incredibles eye logo and the swooshes into the number. Okay,
well, it should have at the very least have been red. The car should have been red.
Yeah, this was a huge missed opportunity. Horrible paint scheme. I love Terry. Terry, I love you. You had some memorable.
Terry's fault. The scheme sucked.
Yeah, I know.
Whoever was in charge of promoting the movie.
and I'm sorry to those who designed the car if you thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I'm going to disagree. And to me, this is my pick for the worst paint scheme in the 2004 NASCAR Nextel Cup Series season. Oh, and by the way, unfortunately, Terry, you qualified 31st and you finished 32nd. Sorry.
Oh, yikes!
Yeah, not good.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump into mine. Mine is one that has always bothered me. This one is always, ever since first time I saw it, this one bothered me. So Bill Davis ran a second car, number 23, originally with Dave Blaney and later with a couple other drivers. I think Mike Skinner drove it, and maybe and I know Shane Meal drove it later in the year. But this always bothered me. So originally they had like sponsorship for the first couple of races, and I think maybe 2 or 3 more later. With Whelen Engineering on this 23 with Dave Blaney. It was a 23 Dodge. And it was all white. It was a really good looking car, actually. I didn't mind it at all. It was actually pretty good. But then, whatever in the world happened with it after Whelen left, they kept the wrap of this, or whatever they did, they kept the top wrap. So it was still like this different font of 23, but then on the roof of the car, it was entirely different. It was still like the Whelen Engineering wrap, and every time they ran this car with a different paint scheme, they never changed the roof. So the roof never matched the paint scheme, ever. As soon as Whelen was off the car, like I think Shane Meal drove it with Cat Rental on it at one point. It looked like it was the most slapped together piece of crap car. You're looking at it. It looks like an ARCA car. It does look like an ARCA car.
Okay, we both said the same thing. Yeah, it did look like an ARCA car.
I mean, all it was lacking was a bunch of tape on it rolling off of a hauler. You know, then it's a true ARCA car when it's got tape on it off the hauler.
Yeah.
I mean, this Bill Davis at this time, I recognize that, he might not have had enough money to run 2 cars anymore, but he surely had enough money to re-wrap the thing. I mean, they didn't even try to make it look nice. It looked like the most ugliest car. I mean, if my product's logo is on that, I'm embarrassed. Like, they've got a whole other car out there that looks beautiful. It's cat colored. It looks great. And then you have this other piece of junk running around there as an R&D car, basically, at the back of the field, barely making the show, looking like a piece of junk that just rolled off the truck, from some dude's backyard out in Missouri. It's awful. It's awful. But I don't know how this happened. This kind of stuff would never be allowed today. Maybe in ARCA. I know it's allowed in ARCA, but I don't think it'd be allowed in top 3 NASCAR series at least.
No, it is technically it is allowed in Cup because Jimmy Johnson did it last year. He had the 48 on the side decal like Earnhardt's 3, and then the roof.
Yeah, but it wasn't. That was designed that way. It wasn't done that way out of pure laziness. It was designed that way.
I don't think there's anything that says the top has to match the side. You just can't have like two different colored sides. You can't have the right side be red and the left side be blue.
Like Terry Labonte's last ride was supposed to be.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be the Kellogg's Corn Flakes and or the Piedmont Airlines.
Yep.
Yeah, car. That was a great looking car. Just unfortunately was not allowed to race. Yeah.
NASCAR said no, but then said yes. Or didn't they let Suarez run one like that? I think, like a Lennox and Irwin Tools combo one. And that wasn't on Suarez. That was just like I was like, wait, so this is not okay, but this is.
I think it was on. Yeah. Well, again, you get years later, different leadership, different people making decisions. That's the way it works.
Let's talk about the racing because. We told everybody in the start of the show we were going to talk about racing, and we're 45 minutes in. We haven't even talked about the races from this weekend, so let's jump into it. Truck Series was at Kansas. It was a fairly decent race, I guess. Josh, we watched it a little bit. I enjoyed it. I had it on the second screen. Obviously, I was watching IndyCar instead because there's a reason. I'm going to pick IndyCar over Truck Series race anytime. That's not an insult to the Truck Series. That's a straight up insult to Vince Welch being a terrible color commentator. I'm sorry. Again. I'm sorry. My opinions are really, really strong today. Let's go ahead. But Kyle Busch won the race, as to no one's surprise. Of course, there was periods there where I didn't think he was going to win it. He didn't end up taking the lead in the last couple of laps, or actually on the last restart. I mean, he restarted like fifth or something, maybe third or fourth or something, and then
second on the
he was waiting for other drivers two drivers like touched, and he was gone. He just took the lead, almost like what happened to him on Sunday. Yeah. I mean, he just kind of lucked into both wins. I don't want to say lucked in because he ran very, very well in races. He was around at the finish. He didn't luck into them, but he was very lucky in where he was able to place his car, I should say.
Yeah, he was the best truck on Saturday night for the trucks, but that caution, and then he came out, and whatever happened on that restart certainly shuffled him back, and he was not going to win that race until there was another caution, in which case he regrouped and had a really great restart. And
don't count out Kyle Busch, man.
You don't ever
can.
The only way I count him out is if he's the fourth rower back.
Then I wouldn't.
Fourth rower back, I'm like, I think there's going to be
if
too
he's
wide.
In the fifth row, I think he could do it. It depends on the length of the restart. If it's 10 to go and he restarts 10th, I think he can do it. If it's like 5, if it's an overtime finish and he restarts 10th, probably not.
Yeah, and
it depends.
Yeah, I think he had the best truck and he deserved to win. Won both stages.
Yeah.
But I did want to note this too. Nice Motorsports ran really well. They had a really good showing, and they ran. Ross Chastain was in the. Was he in the 44?
The melon car. He was in the melon car.
He was in the 44
melon truck. I keep calling it car. It's a truck. We're talking about the Truck Series.
Side note: I've been wanting to say this. You know what? Mountain Dew needs to sponsor him with the Major Melon flavor. Come on,
really?
It writes itself, folks. It writes itself. But Ross Chastain and Bailey Curry running really well, and Bailey Curry was in the 45. Just throwing this out there. What does that say about Brett Moffitt?
I think it says Brett Moffitt is still focusing on the Xfinity Series more than the Truck Series.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I think that,
and I don't blame him for that.
I
think he's got a better deal with Our Motorsports than he does with Nice, because I think he's an afterthought at Nice. Nice cares about like Ross and whatever, and whoever brings money. And I don't think Moffitt's like a high on their list as he used to be. I don't think he ever was, but
Hocevar has been the best car there all season long.
I don't think they're giving. They might not, because he's not running for points there anymore. I think they're not giving him the best stuff either.
I don't think he's coming back.
Probably not. Why would you?
I don't think he's coming back because he could have run this race. He now can't run the trip races starting next week at Darlington, then Dover, and then Coda. He could have ran this race, so I think he might be done at Nice. He might be done.
I think he's fine. I think he's got a better deal, like I said, with Our Motorsports. Moving on here to Formula One. We had an interesting race here at Portimao. Always a good, fun place, but so much controversy around track limits. Again, F1 continues every week to basically write rules as they please on track limits.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's the drivers or if it's the regulations are too strict. I really don't know what it is. I mean, I don't want it to be like NASCAR where track limits don't exist, but I don't want it to be like super laid back that guys are getting advantages and taking advantage of gray areas in the rules. It's really tough to get in on that. I think plain and simple, the drivers just, if they're upset about track limits, I really think that, especially like Verstappen, Helmut Marko was all upset about track limits. Verstappen was all upset about track limits. Everybody's upset about track limits because they keep losing, getting their times deleted and fast laps deleted. It's like, I understand that, I respect that, but here's the thing: if you can't set those laps without cutting the course or using some extra part of the course, you didn't deserve it anyway. Because the idea is to use the appropriate to set the fastest lap within the appropriate bounds of the track. And I understand. I think that should be more strict during qualifying than it should be during the race. I think during the race, you're going for every inch possible. And sometimes you're just going. I think there's instances in a lot of cases where you're going to be going for a pass and. If you put all four wheels onto the rumble strips or onto the runoff area just for a brief moment and then come back onto the track, I can't, it could be a simple gust of wind. It could be a pressure change from getting too close to the car in front. It could be a number of things. It's not necessarily driver error. You know what I mean? There's situations in that where it's not always driver error. Or it's not always the drivers not paying attention to track limits. It's usually, in some cases, something else that's out of their driver's control that would make them do something as a track limits violation that would be that egregious. I think in Verstappen's case, I don't necessarily think that he should have had his fastest lap time deleted. I think they should be, again, more lenient on track limits during the race. They should be more strict during qualifying and less strict during the race, if that makes any sense to me. Because I think during qualifying, I want them to be like, all right, when you're going for your fastest lap, here's how you should learn how to do it while staying within the track limit parameters. Now, if you get to the race and you're setting the same laps you would have set in qualifying and you go off, we're going to know, the FIA and the stewards are going to know, oh, okay, you didn't do this to gain an advantage because you wouldn't normally have done that. You did this because of some other reason. Or just at the very least give them more than 3 strikes in situations like that. Because sometimes drivers could just do it on accident. That's how I felt about track limits during the race. I think track limits is too strict during the race right now. Track limits should be policed more during qualifying. What do you say, Josh?
Well, yeah. Well, there's a couple points. A lot of points I want to say. First off, I think there's definitely an underlying favoritism. There's certainly drivers who have not, definitely people who have gone over the line and exceeded track limits and not been penalized. So these cars are technologically advanced enough that they can put sensors on these cars and they can be like, okay, yep, you exceeded track limits. Oh, you exceeded track limits, and you can tell when these cars did. And after a certain point, and I wouldn't say, like, just say you've exceeded track limits all across the track 3 times, you get a strike. I think you need to have at certain points because, okay, you exceeded track limits in turn 4 3 times. Next one, you're getting a penalty. And if you exceed track limits in turn 14, you get 3 strikes there. But my thing is, and I've heard, and I was going through comments on Twitter and what other people were saying, and I have to agree, the drivers have it too easy. They have it too easy because these tracks aren't punishing. You go off, you have asphalt runoff, so you're going to use every inch that you can get, a la. Look at what happened at Kansas and Texas this past weekend in the IndyCar, the Cup Series at Kansas, or NASCAR Cup at Kansas and IndyCar at Texas. You're going to use every inch you can get. If it's grass there or gravel there on the edge, you have a white line, and then you have 6 inches of pavement, and then you have something that is not pavement. You're going to get punished.
Like Imola was a great example of that because there's almost no runoff area at Imola, but at almost every other track, there's runoff areas aplenty.
Yes, and for whatever there's plenty of reasons, safety, and cost.
Or at the very least, they should do it more like Bahrain and put a bunch of sand everywhere.
Yes, I see.
Not like kitty litter, not like gravel, but like actual sand.
Yeah, put
like at
something
Bahrain.
that if your tire hits that, you're going to be like, crap, darn it. You are going to lose time. It's going to be self-policing. You won't even have to worry about track limit penalties because the driver's going to lose seconds, multiple seconds, just by going off. So these tracks are too easy to drive because they're forgiving. They're too forgiving. That's why you're not too easy to drive, but they're just too forgiving. But since we don't have that, and you're not going to go around to the 19 permanent circuits on the calendar and say, hey, you got to make these changes or you're going to lose your date type of deal because we're going to fix it this way. You have to police it consistently, and the race director and the race, we got to point the finger at Michael Massey at this because he has not been consistent in the leadership role in this because it is just at this point it's a joke. It is a straight up joke, and the teams who are losing out on this do not deserve it because honestly, they're not doing it as much as another.
Well, that's a good point. I think that we're looking at a situation where this will probably be talked about for the rest of the season, probably, and until something gets done about it. But Lewis Hamilton was the winner. I was actually surprised. Hamilton looked really fast because I was surprised there for a minute because when Bottas speeded him into turn 1, I was like, oh, okay, let's see what Bottas's pace looks like. Then Max got by Hamilton, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe Hamilton doesn't have much pace. Let's see what Max has. Then I don't know what the heck happened, but after that safety car for Raikkonen running into Gio, which, again, Raikkonen makes so many freaking mistakes. I love Kimi. Everybody loves Kimi, but dude, I don't know where his focus is because he runs into his own teammate and I said this is him. He said he was making an adjustment on his steering wheel. He wasn't looking. He wasn't paying attention to where Gio is. He was looking down at the steering wheel and he just nails his teammate's rear wing. It's like you can't do that, dude. Yeah. You were a former world champion in Formula One. I understand that you say it's just a hobby to you, but hobby or not, you can't run into the back of your teammate and ruin his race because you're not paying attention. I mean, that's not fair to Gio. Gio gets too much crap because he's teamed with Kimi, and everybody's comparing him to Kimi, and it's not fair to Gio because I think Gio's a way better driver than anybody gives him credit for. And I've said that for a long time. I think Gio's a way better driver. He's not going to set the world on fire, but he's not going to set the world on fire in F1. But I'm saying if that guy goes to like WEC or Formula E, I say he's a champion immediately. You know what I mean? But that, Formula One is not for everybody, as we see, and that's not a bad thing. You don't have to be the greatest Formula One driver of all time to have your racing career be a success. There's plenty of drivers that can vouch for that. Rossi's one, even Michael Andretti. Michael Andretti sucked in Formula One again. He was teammates with Ayrton Senna. He was gonna suck. He was doomed from the start. But nobody ever is gonna say Michael Andretti was a bad driver. Nobody would say that because we all know what he was able to accomplish over here in IndyCar. He never won the 500, but I would chalk that one up to literally being cursed. It's not his fault. He's cursed. He's cursed. It's not his fault. He's a good driver in his own respect. He's won kart championships. You don't win kart championships by being a bad driver. It doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Hell, he's got good finishes at Indy. He's just never won the thing.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. That's what I'm talking about. So, but, I look at that and I say, Kimi needs to reevaluate some stuff because it's not fair. If he's screwing Gio over at this point, that's not fair to Gio. Gio deserves better than that. But yeah, after what I was getting at was after Kimi had the accident, brought out safety car, Hamilton became another driver. Hamilton just became a completely other driver. I mean, he passed Verstappen and then he passed Bottas. No effort at all. He just turned it on. I don't know if he just had a bad start or whatever, but as soon as that restart on that safety car went out, Hamilton, it was like he started his race at that point. And he just started, he was like, all right, let's go for it. And then I gotta talk about Perez here for a minute. Perez is kind of getting the short end of the stick. I don't know if it's him making mistakes or if it's Red Bull not giving him whatever Max has.
I think it's him adjusting. You
think so?
I think, well, he hasn't, in the first two races, just didn't go his way from start to finish.
Right.
And then
this race could have gone better, but they had a slow stop on pit road, and that screwed them.
Yeah, but I think this was the most complete race he's run. And look, it's going to take time for him to adjust to this team, this car, this culture where he's been at Racing Point for all these years, and or now Aston Martin. But he's been there. I'm not worried about his performance yet. I would actually say, look, this is going to be fun. Mercedes may win the Drivers' Championship with Lewis Hamilton, but Red Bull might win the Constructors' Championship battle.
I think Red Bull should really be focusing on the Constructors' title because they have a legitimate chance to take it to them. Bottas, I don't want to say this. I don't know how to say this, but Hamilton's not going to retire as often as Bottas will. Bottas already has one retirement this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one retirement. Now, and if Perez hadn't finished outside the points in that same race, Red Bull would be ahead right now. I have to think it's going to happen again. Bottas is going to have another retirement. Red Bull has to make sure that they capitalize with Perez, and they have to make sure that Verstappen doesn't break down. They have to make sure they capitalize.
Yeah, and I would say this, even that. I think you're going to see Lewis Hamilton and Verstappen in the top 3 a lot. Very rarely.
That's going to be the main title fight this year. Is Hamilton versus Verstappen.
Yes, but
I think we've all known that from the start.
But you're going to see Perez in the top 4 more often than you're going to see Bottas in the top 4, and that is why Bottas is the big weak link at Mercedes for the Constructors' Championship, where in previous years he hasn't had to worry about that because the second driver, Red Bull, has not been good. All right, has not been up to the task. Now, Perez being in that second seat it's going to be fun to watch that infighting because Toto's not going to want to win the Drivers' Championship and lose the Constructors' Championship.
No,
but
he's not.
Red Bull wants to just snatch that away and say, "Guess what? You weren't perfect this year."
I'm interested into seeing it. Things I want to talk about here. Mazepin ignored blue flags again. But actually, this is what's interesting. I'm going to talk about Mazepin for a minute because this is what's crazy. I know it's easy and fun to hate on him and stuff, but this is what I'm hearing more and more is I guess his race engineer is just a giant idiot. He doesn't tell him anything.
I don't know.
This is I'm serious. Apparently, because people will post like excerpts from like F1 TV on Reddit, and you can see all this and you can listen to this. And it's always interesting to me because Mazepin will make a mistake, and then immediately, as soon as he makes that mistake, you hear like race engineer get on and be like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you this." And
yeah.
I'm serious. This is almost every time Mazepin makes a mistake, and then his race engineer gets on and is like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot." Like, so this is what I was watching. I'm watching. You can listen if you can find it. You can listen to it. Mazepin is not told. He's not told. When Perez is coming up on him and he chops him. His race engineer did not tell him that the leader was coming at the rate that he was coming at. Did not tell him. Mazepin did not see the blue flags until it was too late. And he almost like wrecked Perez and was like, "Oh shoot, I'm in it." Like, I think he knows he's under a microscope. And who would understand that? Of course he's under a microscope. So like, if his own race engineer isn't relaying this stuff, he knows it's making him look worse. Like, people already are looking at him, looking for excuses to like bash him, and now his race engineer's over here not doing his job. How are you basically making him look worse?
I hear if I get 2 races that are like, "Ooh, I forgot that," I'm like, "Okay, you're gone."
He needs a new race engineer. He just flat needs a new race engineer.
Desperately.
I mean, I understand everybody hates him. But seriously, if Haas wants to, at the very least, make the guy not look as bad as he does now, they need to find him a new race engineer because he's going to keep making these mistakes until he gets somebody competent on the radio.
Is this guy who was before we move on, is this guy who was a race engineer for either Grosjean or
I don't know who it is. I really don't know, but it's just been interesting because apparently when in qualifying, when he had that, I didn't know this until someone posted the video as well. In qualifying, at Bahrain, when he overtook everybody against the gentleman's agreement, his race engineer didn't tell him what was going on. He just was like, go. He was just like, he just told him to go, and he was like, oh, okay, well, I better go. And he just starts passing everybody because that's what his race engineer told him. His race engineer did not tell him, hey, wait until everybody goes. They're waiting to gap the car ahead of them. You know what I mean? And that's what he should have said. He didn't tell him that. He just said, oh, yeah, go, whatever. He wasn't paying attention or whatever. So Mazepin, thinking, oh, well, my race engineer knows more than I do, goes, and then after the race is getting yelled at by everybody, and he's like, but I didn't know, no one told me. And and in his defense, that was his legitimate defense. Nobody had told him. And now listening onto the radio and seeing that, it's like, oh yeah, you're right.
Maybe this is Haas's whole ploy to get him some sympathy points.
If that's, it's working for me, because man, I'm still in the hashtag say no to Mazepin club, but dude, if his race engineer is screwing him every week, I've got to say that I don't think he deserves it as much as, I mean, he deserves crap for what he did on Instagram, but what he's doing behind the race car, I don't think he deserves that kind of crap. Moving on here to Texas. IndyCar had 2 races in Texas. Again, I'm going to reiterate what the first race was crap. I'm sorry. The first race was crap. I don't know what it is. If it was probably a number of situations. Obviously, Texas, talked about it last year, 1 year ago on this show, 1 year and a month ago on this show. I ranted about how Texas needs to bulldoze 1 and 2 again and remake it 24 degrees of banking, because this whole repave thing is just awful. Either they need to just repave the whole track entirely and fix it, or I don't know. It's just unacceptable, because Texas was once a great track. It produced the best racing. It was one of the few racetracks, I think, that consistently had good NASCAR and IndyCar races. And there's not very many racetracks that can say that. Normally, it's one or the other. You either have a really good IndyCar race, or you have a really good NASCAR race, or you have a dud of a NASCAR race or a dud of an IndyCar. You never have both. And Texas was always that nice thing where it could put on any NASCAR race, Xfinity, Truck, Cup, didn't matter, be a good show. It could go on IndyCar and put on a good show as well. And now it can't put on a good show for either, because you have all of turn 1. Basically, you have a groove and a half in turn 1, and then it's ice. It's just ice. How the hell do you pass? And watching Texas on day 1, congrats to Scott Dixon, but he dominated the race. There was no passing at all. It seemed almost difficult to pass, because I'm going to go with the race conditions. So it was a lot cooler on Saturday night, and also was a more night race. And it also rained. So I think that played into a lot of it. I think you had cooler air temperatures. You had more grip on in the tires, but you didn't have enough grip on the track, if that made any sense. Yeah. So the combination of those two was not going to create a good race. But Scott McLaughlin did get second, which is incredible. That's on oval debut, by the way. Scott McLaughlin had never driven an oval before. Second on oval debut, which is really impressive. Really, really, really impressive there. And I got to give him creds on that. But it just, that PJ1, they tried to scrape it off, obviously. But here's the thing. The PJ1 didn't work for NASCAR. It's not work. It's making the IndyCar product worse. Yeah. I mean, and I know they tried to scrape it off, and they've tried to scrape it off, but I don't think it's coming off.
The concrete.
It's not coming off. They just, and I hate to be, I know Eddie Gossage probably doesn't have the money or the ability to put into it right now, because he hasn't done it. But dude, you have to repave that and fix that turn 1, because I'm so worried about Texas losing more fans because of the poor product it puts on now. I mean, it used to put on the best product you could buy for your money, and it's hosting the All-Star race, and I just don't think the All-Star race is going to be that good of a race, because IndyCar, the race 2 was better, and I'm going to explain why race 2 was better. It was because I think it was a little bit hotter. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit less, it was a little bit more slick on the racetrack, but the groove had been, the main groove had been put on from the race yesterday. So I think there's more room to play with. And it really seemed, it wasn't a Texas race. It seemed more like an Indianapolis style race, where it was kind of like you set up to pass. You don't make your pass on a whim because you have the draft. It's more like, all right, I need to find where I'm going to get in the draft. I need to take this corner this way, and I need to set up my pass, because you really had to make the pass in a turn 1 when you break. So you have to go, basically, you have to follow the guy through turns 1 and 2 as best as you can, get a good draft of them down the backstretch, and follow that car as much as you can through turns 3 and 4, which, again, you can go full throttle through. which really bothered me. Guys were pulling like 214, 215 through turns 3 and 4, but then had to back out to about 180 for turns 1 and 2. That's ridiculous.
You could
That's ridiculous.
Hear the difference on in-car.
But it really did make the Sunday race a lot more interesting because there was more ability to pass. Now, I don't know if that was because of, I don't know what that was for. I want to say it was because it was a little bit warmer, a little bit nicer, more grip had been laid down prior to that from the night before.
All the reason right there.
But it was a better race. We got a better race. Another thing. So you had a big crash on the start of the race. Connor Daly flipped. Pietro Fittipaldi got into Sebastian Bourdais, set him off. So that's the second time in 2 days Bourdais got wrecked by someone behind him. Not his fault at all, which is really disappointing because Bourdais definitely has had nothing but terrible luck since returning to IndyCar. Seriously, like he has had nothing but terrible luck. Yeah, he's won some races, but outside of that, he's just had awful, awful luck. And he's not won races in a while. It's been a while since he's won some races. A couple of years, I think.
Yeah, last one I think was maybe at St. Pete a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. 2018 St. Pete, I think I want to say. But what I'm saying here is something IndyCar really needs to start doing, is especially in ovals, is they got to throw the green flag in the backstretch again. I mean, this is getting dangerous. I mean, Formula One has this problem where you have guys lagging back, and then going, and then the rear of the field is trying to bunch up, and they're coming at such a rate of speed. And then you have the leader just start lagging back right before the restart zone, and then everybody's trying to slow up from who's coming up, trying to bunch up from behind, and you just have this problem. What they used to do back in the day, in the old IRL days, was they throw the green on the backstretch, so you basically the cars would be up to speed by the time they hit the front straightaway. That pretty much avoided all of those big, heavy backups and accidents that you saw on Sunday. The IRL needs to do that. IndyCar, I call them the IRL. The IndyCar needs to do that. Go back to that, because that was, I think, a safer way to start the race, and it just made more sense on an oval for when you have these. I mean, at Indianapolis, yeah, I understand. You want to wait till the front stretch to throw it, but let's be honest, you don't have really 11 rows of 3 unless the guys are backing off as far as possible. On most tracks, you have the rear end of the field trying to catch up and bunch up by the time the green flag starts. If you just throw the green flag on the restart, then those guys at the back will be full throttle by the time they get hit the restart. Anyway, you won't have any of these big backups. Josh, you wanted to have something to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good. I think you have a point, but I think the reason they won't do that is because of the PJ1 in turns 3 and 4. Just in case the guys.
But I'm saying if they on another oval. I'm saying if they do this at Gateway, I'd prefer that. Or if they came and went to another high-speed oval like Michigan, in my fantasy dream that they go to Michigan, and I'm so happy they do it there. Or like I said, if Texas is actually able to repave the track and fix it, they should still do it anyway. Because I just think it's safer, and it will prevent accidents like that on the start.
Yeah, but I think that what they got to do now is just there needs to be sort of a gentleman's agreement, kind of like what we see at Indianapolis. There's major spacing in between the rows where you're going to be single file or mostly single file by the time you get to turn 1. At Indianapolis, we see that on the initial starts. You know, I mean, the pole sitter gets first, second. You know, kids can't pass before you get to the line, anyways. But that's what needs to happen. This field, there needs to be some sort of a gentleman's agreement. Like, I get it, you know, track position is king, but we also want to survive through lap 1. Okay, these guys didn't even complete one lap. They completed 50 feet at best. So they need to be a little bit more gentlemanly about it, and just say.
Well, I've said that about IndyCar for the longest time, because ever since Wickens crashed, I mean, I've always said that, you know, these guys aren't nearly as smart as they should be. You know, we saw it with the Wickens crash at Pocono. Wickens never should have done that. Well, by the way, he's supposed to announce here tomorrow. I guess he's getting an IMSA drive, which is good for him. But
good for him.
I mean, I still blame him for that, and I think, you know, it's probably wrong. It's probably wrong. I understand. People probably hate me for that, but at the same time, it's like he should have known. You don't go 3 wide. You don't try and make a turn in the tunnel turn at Pocono on lap 2. You don't do that. Yeah. You don't do that. You got to be smarter. These guys need to be smarter. And you said that with the gentleman's agreement, they need to be more gentlemanly respect. They just flat need to be smarter, because I think you're seeing situations where guys are just going balls to the wall, and that's fine to a limit. When you do that responsibly, it's fine. Like Graham Rahal doing that late in the race is responsible.
Yeah.
Now, if Graham Rahal is doing that on lap 5, I'm going to call Graham Rahal out on that. But if he's doing this with 20 to go, 30 to go, I don't blame him. At that point, I would expect him to.
Now you can go for it. To win, to finish, or to win, you first must finish. You know, so
Yes.
if you don't get there, I mean, great. All right, let's go home. And instead, Bourdais got he's probably got one wrecked car, but Foyt had an expensive weekend. None of they're doing, and because of just people just stacking up on top of each other. And you think you're going to go, you're going, you're inching, you're nudging that throttle, and then we all stack up, and then you have a car running a guy.
I wasn't even so sure I was going to pin all that blame on Pietro, because I mean, some people could say it was a rookie mistake, but I don't really think it was, because Pietro has taken restarts before when he was racing on short tracks, on the East Coast. He's done it before. I mean, I think he was ready for it. It's just a matter of, like he said in the interview, they just got stacked up because guys weren't going. Guys up front weren't going when they were supposed to. You can't go, and then lag back a little bit like Dixon did on the start. And I kind of pin that on Dixon. I don't pin that on Pietro. And I think Bourdais should not have been upset with Pietro. He should have been upset with Dixon. Yeah. And I understand it's terrible to call out Dixon because he's literally a living legend. Someone posted on Reddit today that he's won one race for every 6 starts that he's ran in IndyCar, which is an insane stat. But he made a mistake on Sunday. He led them down way too slow, and he indirectly basically caused that accident. And Pietro was just doing what he was supposed to do, which was get up to speed and bunch up, because he was starting at the rear of the field. He was just trying to get up to speed, and he ran into Bourdais, who was trying to check up and who was also running into speed, and then he had to check up, and then you don't have brake lights on these cars. How are you going to know what's going on in front of you? But anyway, Pato O'Ward was the big winner in race 2, which was a great win for him. Like I said, a great finish, great run to the finish. It was great. Like I said, it felt like an Indianapolis run where they were setting up their passes. It did seem like on Sunday it was more possible to pass than it was on Saturday. But again, that's not how Texas should be, man. Texas shouldn't be like that. And I think IndyCar did a good job with the aero package. I thought they were a lot closer. I thought the cars were a lot closer than they have been in years past. But at the same time, I just think, something needs to be done with that track. I don't think it's IndyCar. IndyCar's done everything they can. The drivers have done everything they can. I think Texas has done everything they can within a budget. But the only thing that's going to fix it is repaving that whole track. And that's unfortunate.
I agree. It is a major problem. I think I think it's been realized that this is kind of a wake up call for me. For me, it's the last point I'll make about the IndyCar race. This is a wake up call for the industry, and NASCAR included in this. That if we abuse this PJ1, it will have permanent effects on the track that probably can only be fixed by a repave or whatever, because they know now this isn't coming off. We're not going to, until this gets fixed. And again, we go back a few episodes ago. I talked about all the irons in the fire that Speedway Motorsports has. You have Nashville. You have COTA now. Where's that going to look? Atlanta repave and remodel there is imminent. All right, that is coming. That is the next.
They could repave Atlanta all they want, but they better not banking. That's all I'll say.
I agree, but
don't be like Texas and Kentucky. Don't ruin it like they did.
I don't think they're going to do that. I think they've learned their lesson on that. But I think when you look at the project that they have, Texas is down the line because they just invested all this money in it. So they've got it. Unfortunately, I don't think they're not going to lose NASCAR. But
I'm going to say this: if the All-Star race ends up being the disaster that I think it'll be, because I really think what you're going to see is guys side by side. PJ1, and just like IndyCars did, it's going to become ice. They're just going to slide up, and there's nothing those Cup cars can do. There's nothing the IndyCars can do. It's just down to the track, and it's very unfortunate. So let's move on here to the NASCAR Cup Series race at Kansas. It was a great race, actually. Again, this. As much as I hate this package, I have to admit it puts on some great races at Kansas. It has put on some memorable races at Kansas, and this was another one. I gotta say, I didn't hate this race at all. I was enjoying it until the IndyCar race started. I watched it. I put it on before the IndyCar race, and I was watching the first two stages, and the first two stages were really good. And that's usually not something that I could say. I mean, there was a lot of passing. There was a lot of 3-4 cars, the top 4 cars under a blanket. Then they get into some traffic, and then they start swapping the lead, swapping positions in traffic. I mean, it was really, really good. It was good, classic, good old looking NASCAR there. Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch, we said here, Kyle versus Kyle. It was them all day. They definitely had the best cars. And then sometimes it was really interesting to see both of them fall back a little bit, get back in the pack, and then have to work their way up. It was a really good NASCAR race. I mean, considering the fact that the IndyCar race was such a dud, I think comparatively, the NASCAR race was outstanding. I mean, that's not something that I say every week. I'm usually one of the negative ones when it comes to NASCAR racing. I think, usually the races are not nearly as good as they could be. But this one specifically, they have nailed down the package at mile and a halfs like Kansas and like at Las Vegas.
Chicagoland before we lost.
I was going to say Chicagoland, but we've lost it. I was even going to say Kentucky, too. I think they have I think if they had not repaved Kentucky and ruined the turns like they had, this package on Kentucky would make some good racing.
This package on Old Texas would make some good racing.
Oh, yes. On Old Texas, it would be outstanding. Really unfortunate. I mean, this package should not be used on really anything but a mile and a half. That's the main point. Like, the only time you should see this, you should not be running this package at Dover. You should not be running this package, at Loudon. You should not be running this package at Michigan. But,
Michigan at its own thing.
At Kansas, this is a perfect package. It produces some good racing. We saw some great pit strategy. Even I was very, very entertained overall by the entirety of the NASCAR race. Of course, the restart. Oh my gosh, the restarts were crazy, which of course NASCAR tried to do with this package. And they have succeeded. They caused a lot of accidents, and they made the start feel like I was like, man, are we still at Talladega? I remember I'm watching the first 5 laps, and I'm thinking, man, are we still at Talladega? These guys are still side by side in a pack.
That was
pretty good.
The initial Las Vegas test that they had, where they were literally drafting in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's again, like I said, they have this package down pat for mile and a half, but it's not worth it anywhere else. But yeah, so. Like I said, great run to the finish. Even had double overtime. We had, I think, a double overtime finish. Is that right? Was it double overtime or was it just a single overtime? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
I might be misremembering too. I was watching the IndyCar race during the finish of the NASCAR race. I was paying more attention to the IndyCar race than I was the NASCAR race. That's on me. But I still saw the end. Kyle Busch ended up winning. And he won it in spectacular fashion. Yeah, hey, by the way, Kyle Busch winning.
Actually, it did not go into overtime. They got the race going with just regular two to go.
Okay, so then Fox was wrong because Fox had the ticker saying overtime. That bothers me then.
No, according to Racing Reference.
No, I believe Racing Reference. I'm just saying the Fox ticker
reference.
That I saw, it clearly stated NASCAR overtime on the last restart.
Okay, then, well.
And that's why I'm upset. That's why I thought it was an overtime, because the ticker said it was an overtime.
I agree. I would be upset too, yeah. It's not
anyway,
overtime.
So Kyle Busch is sets a record as being undefeated on his birthday. He's never lost a cup race that was held on his birthday. He's now undefeated. And he ties Cale Yarborough's record for 2 race wins on his birthday.
Yeah.
And this is a really important thing to Kyle, because I don't know if you guys heard, and this is more sad news. This is really sad news today, but Samantha lost another baby.
Yeah.
They're just having fertility issues, and Kyle was, you could tell Kyle was upset about it. And a lot of people have kind of speculated that maybe Kyle is moving into a different career in his life. If you ever watch, he has great YouTube videos of him helping Brexton race.
Yes.
And it's almost like him. This is the closest we'll ever get to the Kyle Busch School of Racing. Is him teaching? Is what we are able to see him teach Brexton, because he says things to Brexton that I'd never even thought about, like as a sim racer per se. You know what I mean? As someone who just is an armchair racer, he says stuff I've never thought of before. Like how to approach certain tracks, how to approach certain corners, how to approach a car, things like that. Valuable information. Kyle Busch, very, very smart. Overall, just a great Cup Series race. So let's move on here to the weekend wrap-up. The ARCA Menard Series race at Kansas. That was actually not a terrible race, but Ty Gibbs ended up winning it. Ty Gibbs, again, continuing his dominance of the lower divisions. Every time he enters a race, he's going to do well. That's pretty much the fact of the matter. Gotta love some Ty Gibbs. Kids destined for greatness. I'm telling you. If his record right now in racing tells us anything, he's destined for greatness. And then the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps was this weekend. Hey, Motor Trend had this weird thing where they had the first hour or 2 hours on at 7 in the morning, and then when it started, and then they showed a bunch of car shows in the middle of it, and then showed like the last hour and a half. It was really weird. Motor Trend, I don't understand. But then I don't even know if you can watch it on the app. I don't know if you have to pay for Motor Trend on demand to watch the whole thing. I don't know. But anyway, Toyota Gazoo Racing won in the hypercar, and overall, that was driven by Sebastian Buemi, Kazuki Nakajima, and Brendan Hartley. Good. So a good 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps over the weekend, in case you were able to watch that. There was also other races, but the Euro Formula Open started their season this week. And then you had the Australian S5000 Series down under wrapped up their season. Joey Mawson, who actually raced in F3 previously, last couple of years, actually has been running over in Europe. He came back to down under where he was from and won the Australian S5000 championship. So good for him. Joey Mawson, he's the S5000 champion for 2021. And then now moving on to the outstanding performance. Josh, you've got an outstanding performance you'd like to share.
Yeah, I'm going to give mine to Haley Deegan. She was running in the top 10, and if it weren't for the caution for Jennifer Jacobs' stalled truck, gosh, she's got enough heat already. I'm not picking on her. I'm just stating a matter of fact that it was Jennifer Jacobs' stalled truck that brought out the caution. She was going to get a top 10. I think she's running 8th or 9th at the time. And she was spent a lot of time in the top 10, which is somewhat new territory for her this year. She's had a rough go of it. She's back with the finishes that she's gotten, and this Saturday she finished 13th. But she's back in the swarm. She's in the hornet's nest. If you're starting 13th-ish back to 25th, you are in a danger zone in the truck series. And when you can't get out of that, you're going to get hit. You're going to have damage. You're going to have a rough day. And, to see her run as well, I think it's good. Good steps, confidence booster, and that's what we need. When you're moving your way up, you need confidence boosting. Now she feels like, okay, let's do that again. Maybe next time we go with our top 5. We can shoot for that. And she got obviously great guidance up on top of the spot, staying with TJ Majors. So this shout out to her, good job. That's a good positive movement for her.
Yeah, that's really good. Haley Deegan definitely getting better with every race. My outstanding performance, though, is I think it's time we put some respect on Pato O'Ward's name. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, not to say that any people have been disrespecting Pato O'Ward, but I feel like him winning this weekend and getting his first IndyCar win is the first step for him really starting the era of Pato O'Ward. I've watched Pato O'Ward run since he was in Indy Pro 2000. At the time, it was Pro Mazda. I've watched him run that. I've watched him run Indy Lights. I've watched him run F2. I've watched him run Super Formula. He's impressed me in every single time he's gotten in there. Now, maybe he hasn't won a bunch of races, but in terms of overall pace compared to experience level, because usually that's what I have to look at it, is what's his pace like relative to his experience level. And that's what bothers me when Lee Diffie gets on NBC and says, he didn't do very well in F2. And I'm like, Lee, okay, he replaced our Lord and Savior Mahavir Raghunathan, and first of all, and second of all, he was almost immediately up to pace, having never tested the car up until that point. He was immediately on pace with his teammate Jordan King in Formula 2. Now, of course, he didn't set anyone. He didn't score points. He didn't, but who cares? Neither did Jordan King. He was on pace with his teammate, which is all you can ask of a replacement driver. And he did that with no prior experience in the car. He'd never even tested the car. The first time he set foot in a Formula 2 car was on day 1 of practice. And this was, again, on a week's notice? Pato O'Ward is good. Pato O'Ward is good. He is very, very good. And this weekend's race at Texas showed that he's not just good on road courses. He's good on ovals. He's a threat anywhere he goes. And the best, I love this. I mean, I found out I didn't realize this. I guess I knew this subconsciously, but now finding it out, it's still amazing to me. He's the first Mexican to win an IndyCar race since Adrian Fernandez in 2004.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. And I remember Adrian Fernandez. Adrian Fernandez was one of my favorite drivers growing up. I loved that car. I loved Fernandez. I was glad when he stepped away from full-time IndyCar racing because I loved Fernandez running full-time in 2004. That was really cool. And then he stepped away in 2005. I was like, where's Adrian? I miss him. But I ended up watching him later when he was doing sports cars and stuff. Fernandez, great driver. Great, cool guy, too. But anyway, yeah, that Pato O'Ward's first Mexican driver since Fernandez to win. So that's really good. Great for Mexico because I think that they deserve an IndyCar race again. They used to have two when Champ Car ran there, and now they haven't had a single one in years. They do have a Formula One Grand Prix, which is great, but they have Pato now. You know, yes, they have Checo. They have Perez, which is probably more of a draw than Pato O'Ward. Honestly, if I'm Mexican, I'm probably focus more on Perez than I am Pato, but I can't blame him for that. In the same regard as I'm sure Canadian fans still cheer for Stroll and Latifi, no matter what. Yeah. Right? I mean, sure, you would. I mean, I would cheer for the people here who probably cheered for Scott Speed, no matter how.
Well, you tend to support your country of origin. You know, that's just being, taking pride.
I'm saying, like, if Pato becomes a major star, I think it's really time for IndyCar to look into going back to race in Mexico. I think it's time. I think it's long overdue that IndyCar needs to be going to Mexico and Brazil because they have a lot of fans in both of those countries and drivers that are very popular from both of those countries. And it's a shame that they don't go to either of them anymore. Yeah. Anyway, so Pato O'Ward, he gets my outstanding performance. Moving on now, it's time for the upshift and downshift segment. Josh and I's favorite segment of the show. If you're new to the show, welcome. Our upshift downshift question is basically a very basic hypothetical question where we're presented with. Josh and I decide whether or not we like it. We upshift or we downshift if we don't like it. And that's how the game's played. You can join the conversation anytime you want using the hashtag RobinRoller. We'll tweet out all the questions. You can reply to it. You can use the hashtag to reply to us. Doesn't matter, however you want to do it. Let's start off here with the first one. McLaren CEO Zach Brown has called for secret ballot voting to be implemented in all F1 Commission meetings immediately. Do you upshift or downshift this call, Josh?
I do. I'm going to upshift it. I like his reasoning is just so you don't have alliances. Like, okay, Ferrari voted this. I'm Haas. I have to vote for it. So I'm going to upshift. Secret ballots are good. You don't know what hands are playing unless you go up and ask them or you have a meeting afterwards. Do what's best for you, not what is best for, your allegiance, I guess, because deals are being made and I'm all for secret ballots. So definitely I upshift. Go for it.
Yeah, I think of it like Survivor. You go into that confession cam, you cast your ballot secretly.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
That's what they should do. They should social media the heck out of this too. Let's do it.
That would be funny. I'm gonna upshift for that same reason. I mean, it's really a no-brainer to me, especially given the reasons you stated. I think Formula One would benefit from that because you would see probably more rules opened up for the benefit of the teams rather than the benefit of Ferrari. You know what I mean? And I think that's what F1 desperately needs.
Major teams,
Well, no, I'm saying like for years, Ferrari has had like a bigger pull in FIA meetings than any other team, and so that's kind of why I mean that. Like, you don't want Ferrari to have such a big pull. Everybody knows, okay, well, if Ferrari says this, well, if we don't do this, we could get in trouble or we could have problems later. I think it's better if stuff like that's kept anonymous. How about this next one? Toyota has won all 7 races to begin the 2021 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series season. What do you think about this, Josh? Do you upshift that or do you downshift that fact?
Well, you have to downshift for parity, right? I mean, it's not looking very good for Chevrolet or Ford, but Also, Ford just doesn't have the
I
number.
forget Ford even has trucks outside of ThorSport.
They don't have ThorSport anymore. David Gilliland Racing. I mean, when you look at it, they
I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, they really only have 2 full-time Ford trucks that are competitive.
How do I
I know
always
Claire
forget
Roper
that
runs
fact?
Fords, but it's going to be difficult to see a Ford in victory lane this year. Chevrolet, GMS kind of needs to get their act together. We don't know quite what's wrong with them this year. They just started off really slow, and Niche Motorsports obviously has been missing a step there. But yeah, I mean, this is you have to downshift. Even if you're a Toyota fan, and you're going to support anything Toyota, it's not good to see just one manufacturer kind of run away with it like that. So I'm going to downshift.
Personally, I'm neutral on this. I don't care one way or the other. I'm sad that the parity in the Truck Series is not any better, but this is not something that's occupying much thought in my mind, to be honest with you. And I hate to say that because I don't want to put any disrespect on the question because it is a legitimate question. It's a very good point. I mean, very seldom do you see that much domination by one manufacturer this early in the season. But for me personally, it doesn't. I don't really care one way or the other. I just think it should motivate other manufacturers to step their game up because if Toyota is the only one that's really putting money into the Truck Series, like I think they are right now, then if anything, it should just really be motivating Chevrolet and Ford to get more on board with the series if they're getting dominated that badly by Toyota. So that's why I don't really see it as that big of a deal. So I'm going to put it in a neutral. That's just me. How about this? Going on to the next one here, third to last one, penultimate one. Is it time to pull the alarm on Bubba Wallace and 2311 Racing?
Oh, I'm neutral on this. It's getting time where I think there needs to kind of be a sit down and say, look, what we've done the first 11 races doesn't matter. We need to go out there and we just need to go out there and reset. Let's put a good race together. Let's put a second good race together. Right now, they're not able to complete a race. I mean, they were running decent, and then he hits the wall. And I think that's kind of been a constant this year where they've had a good run going, and something goes wrong. Whether it's Bubba's doing, the pit crew's doing, the car's doing, the field, another competitor's doing, something has gone wrong. The good news is they're 21st in points. I think is where they're at, and they're not too far out of 16th. So that's good. So it's not like they're 28th in points. If they were 28th in points, I'm pulling the alarm. Like, okay, something needs to happen. But I'm not so concerned yet. There's a lot of regular season left to go. A lot of things can happen. You get a couple top 10s going together, and all of a sudden you find yourself 17th in points. So I'm neutral at this point.
My humble opinion is I don't think it's time to pull the alarm at all. I think this is to be expected. They're going to have growing pains. There's nobody. If anybody was expecting them to come out of the woodworks and get top 10 every weekend, then they were just sorely mistaken. Also, the fact of the matter is Mike Wheeler has been best crew chief that in the world.
That's great. That's great. Jerry Baxter. If they had Jerry Baxter right now, he'd have at least three top 10s in a top 5.
I think a lot of it, you can't pin everything on Bubba because I think Bubba's doing the best that he can. I think I'm pinning more of this on the team and the crew because I think the cars are fast. I think it's proven that the cars are fast.
Yes.
I think if there was practice and qualifying, I have a very strong feeling that Bubba would probably be starting in the top 10 or the top 15 every week. I don't think he would be any lower than that. We'll see what happens when we do have a qualifying session for once, how fast he lines up. But I'm not pulling the alarm at all. I said it over the weekend. I think I'm not expecting them to they're honestly matching or a little bit exceeding my expectations. I had my expectations for this team very low because I know how hard it is for brand new teams like that to get it off the ground. It doesn't matter how much resources they have. I don't know how much they get from Toyota. I don't know how much they get from Joe Gibbs. They may get some, they may get none. It doesn't matter. But it really doesn't matter because it's a brand new team. You're going to have growing pains. You're not going to be dominant right out of the woodworks. We're seeing the same thing with Trackhouse Racing. I did not expect Suarez to be doing as well as he is. He's doing much better. He's matching and exceeding my expectations, much like Bubba is. It's just, I'm not worried about these teams. If we get down the line and it's 2-3 years into their team's existence and they haven't made any, then I'm going to start pulling the alarm. But it's too early to be alarmed, period, about these teams. If they finish, I know the question was 23-11, but I throw a Trackhouse in there as well, just because I think the situations are the same. But I think really and truthfully, as long as those guys can finish top 25 in points, I think that they've done everything that they needed to do, and then some. Because that's all you can ask of them. Basically, the long story short is if you could finish ahead of who you race on Sunday, that's what matters. That's what matters. Final question here. Michael Andretti told Racer Magazine while he hopes Colton Herta drives for his team for many years to come, he wouldn't stand in Herta's way if, quote, a team like Ferrari called him. Do you upshift or downshift this call by Michael Andretti?
I upshift because I think it's Michael Andretti looking at the bigger picture. Not that it's imperative that F1 have an American driver. I think he knows that Colton Herta is extremely talented and is a great talent, and that if you could get him in an F1 ride that was a competitive, like a Mercedes, a Red Bull, a Ferrari, a McLaren, and even to an extent an Alpine, and he does well, that's going to give a lot of rep points to IndyCar. But I also think he knows, too, that it doesn't hurt to have an American in F1. I think that's maybe a kind of a secondary point, but I upshift at this because I think this is Michael Andretti looking at the bigger picture. So, and I like his candor and I like his honesty. Like, hey, if he gets a call from Ferrari, I'm going to do it. But he didn't point out a team but if he gets a call from Haas, I'm going to say no. Don't do that. He didn't point out a team specifically, but he did allude to that. So, I upshift.
Well, my take on this is, honestly, Michael Andretti's been there. I mean, he got a call from McLaren, and he took that call. And like I've always said, what did that tell us about Michael Andretti? It told us he's the greatest IndyCar driver in the whole wide world, but he's no Ayrton Senna. I mean, that's what it said, and that's not an insult to Michael Andretti. I mean, anybody you get paired with in Formula One is going to be tough to beat. I mean, if Colton Herta gets a call from someone like Ferrari, and he's paired with someone like Charles Leclerc, good luck. Good luck, Colton. I don't care how good you are. Good luck. You're going to have the stiffest competition ever. If he goes to literally anywhere in maybe the top 5 F1 teams, I mean, he's probably going to have a rough time doing it. I respect Michael, the heck out of Michael, saying he's not going to stand in his way, but Michael knows better. Michael knows what it's all about. And secondly, I don't think that F1 teams are looking at IndyCar to scout. And I'm being honest about that. I'm being straight up honest. They are not looking there. They are looking at F2. You know why they're looking at F2? Because budgets are so much bigger in F2. And people with big budgets usually go to those rides. Colton Herta's budget, I cannot imagine, is as big as probably the top 3 in F2. I'll be honest. Now, Callum Ilot's budget wasn't that big. I get it. But Mick Schumacher's budget was pretty big, and Tsunoda had Red Bull backing. Mazepin had a lot of money. There's a lot of other drivers that have a lot of money that'll probably get picked before Colton Herta. And that's just, I hate to be that guy, but that's just the reality of Formula One. That's just how it is. It's so expensive to race in Formula One, and unless you're bringing, 6-figure sponsors, I just don't see it being a possibility. So, I upshift Michael Andretti being all cool with it, but I just downshift that it'll happen. I think we're saying Colton deserves a Formula One ride. He deserves. Yeah, he deserves. But what are the odds of him actually getting it? Or what are the odds of Ferrari actually calling him? Very, very little. I don't care how Colton could go out there, win the 500, win the whole championship 3 times over. It's not going to change anything. Does Scott Dixon get calls from Formula One teams? Probably not. And he's one of the most accomplished IndyCar drivers of this generation. He has probably enough super license points to get into a Formula One ride right off the bat. But nobody's going to call him because they're not looking there. He's, number one, too old, and number two, it's not who they're looking for. They're not looking for someone like that. They're looking for the next big thing that can come out of Formula One that could bring a lot of money. So, I mean, I appreciate Michael Andretti being so positive for Colton, everybody being all positive on him, but let's be honest, guys. If Joseph Newgarden and Alexander Rossi couldn't get Formula One rides, I don't think Colton's going to get it either. And that's not me being negative. That's just me kind of stating the facts. So that's where I'm going with. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. Josh, you're going to take us back to one of my favorite years in IndyCar with your featured race, not featured race track. Remember, we've altered this. It's Roller's featured race. He's going to teach us about a race. Now, this race, and I'm going to preface this here real quick before you get into it. This race was a very interesting race for me. So now, my favorite event back when I was a kid was always the Texas race after Indy. I always look forward to that more than I probably look forward to Indy. Well, I shouldn't say that. It always felt like the after party. You go to prom, and prom's always fun, but then you really want to go to the after prom. The after prom is the fun part, right? So like the 500 for me was always like prom, and then the Texas race was after prom, where you go to the prom and you're like, it's all the ceremony, it's all the pomp and circumstance, it's all big, it's Indy, you have to go to that, everybody loves it. But then the real party's when you go to Texas and everybody's going 3 wide and 2 wide and everybody's going crazy all over the track, and it's a all out full throttle balls to your wall, speed fest at 210 miles an hour. And I loved it. I loved it then, and even though the racing isn't as good anymore, I still love it now. But you're going to tell us about one of my favorite races. This was one of the more controversial ones, because I remember this one and thinking when they announced it. I remember when they announced it too. I was thinking, man, what the heck is the point of this? And I was worried when they announced it earlier. When they announced it was Texas going to be a doubleheader again, I was worried. I was like, don't do what they did in 2011. Don't do what they did in 2011. And they didn't. They didn't. This was a much better way. So, Josh, tell us all about what happened in the 2011 Firestone Twin 125s at Texas Motor Speedway.
Yeah, so I was actually going to do the 2001 kart race, but I didn't want to.
That's a fun one to talk about, though. That has so much history into it, and it has the great. You could find the broadcast from that day is outstanding. It really gives you an idea. But what I really want to find, actually, I wish you would talked about it now. But what I'm still trying to find is footage of the Indy Lights race from that weekend, because I've always heard that the Indy Lights race at Texas in 2001 that accompanied the kart race was one of the most wild and probably the greatest feeder series race in the history of American open wheel racing, even better than some of the Freedom 100s we've had lately. Like, I'm talking that good. Like, probably would have upstaged the kart show had it gone on.
I'm going to have to take your word on that. I don't know. I've never heard of that one. So
there's footage of the Indy Lights race from Las Vegas, which is also kind of like lost to media, lost footage, because that race obviously never got aired for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But that race was basically a photo finish, and it was side by side, fantastic racing. Joseph Newgarden ended up winning it, I think, or someone cut down Pippa Mann's tire on the last lap, and she almost won it, and then Newgarden ended up. It was just crazy. But there's some lost Indy Lights races that I wish we could find, and we have some footage of the Las Vegas race, but we need to find footage of that Texas race. That's what we really need to find. Like, somebody in the Lost Media Wiki needs to try and find it.
Well, as I said, I was going to do the kart race 2001, but Marshall Pruitt did a fabulous 3-part feature on that race weekend on Racer, and I just didn't want to double dip in that. So I do encourage you all, go read those parts. You're going to learn a lot. I learned a lot reading them. Fascinating insight, so do that. So as Rob said, though, I'm going to talk about instead the 2011 Firestone Twin 275s. So in early August 2010, this was announced that IndyCar and Texas Motor Speedway would run this modified doubleheader weekend. It was really a throwback to the 1970s and 80s, where 2 races would be held on the same day, and it would be the first time that IndyCar would do such things, since Rick Mears won both races actually at Atlanta Motor Speedway on June 28th, 1981. So these races would be 275 kilometers in length. There would be a halftime break to kind of celebrate the winner, and then to exchange information with your crew, set up the cars again for race number 2. But both race winners would be official IndyCar wins. So, in the record books, as you go on Racing Reference, you can see that there are 2 winners from that race weekend. And each race would be 114 laps in length. That's where 275 kilometers kind of comes out to. So the starting lineup for the the first race on Saturday was determined by Friday qualifications, which was won by Alex Tagliani in a Sam Schmidt Honda, followed by Dario Franchitti, Will Power, Takuma Sato, and Ed Carpenter. To just show the test of time, too, that 4 of those guys are technically, well, 3 of those guys are racing full time, but Tagliani, you never know, he could come back and race. He still races some races. But Tagliani, Dario Franchitti led the first lap, Tagliani the second, before Franchitti led the third lap through the 48th lap. Scott Dixon, Elio Castro-Neves, Vitor Mira each led a lap during the green flag pit stops before Franchitti took the lead retook the lead on lap 54 and led to the end. There was only one caution on lap 98 that lasted until lap 103 for a crash involving Wade Cunningham and Charlie Kimball.
Fun fact about that. Wade Cunningham, that was what actually drove the car that Dan Weldon won at IMS, and he wrecked it. And I remember because actually Dan Weldon was on the commentary team at that time. He had added to the Versus commentary team, and the disappointment and pain in his voice when he saw that car hit the wall was so visible. They've since obviously fixed it back up to run, but it's crazy to think that car won Indianapolis 1 week prior, and then the very next week Cunningham puts it in the wall in his IndyCar debut, by the way, because I remember Wade Cunningham was one of the best Indy Lights driver, or Indy Pro, or whatever it was called at the time, one of the best drivers in that division for the longest time, and I always wondered why he never got an IndyCar shot. And then as soon as he got his IndyCar shot, I was like, oh, that's why. That's why he never got an IndyCar shot. Anyway, you can go ahead and continue. I just wanted to share that fun fact.
That's a good fun fact. Hey, so as I said, Franchitti won the race. He was followed by Scott Dixon and Will Power, which is important because Power and Franchitti had separated themselves from the rest of the competitors in the standings. Power entered race 1 with a 16-point lead over Franchitti, but after race 1, Franchitti had cut that lead to 7. So this is where the controversy kind of came in. Starting positions for race number 2 would be determined by a blind draw. Instead of a predetermined invert or a singular blind draw invert, picking a hat, okay, I'm the winner. I'm going to start 16th. That means second place is going to start 17th, third place 18th, and so on for the fourth line. Or just a complete invert. That didn't happen. There was a wall brought out onto the front stretch that had a bunch of tires on it, and the drivers walked out here like, okay, I'm going to push this one. And behind the tire was a number. And whatever that number was is where you would start race number 2. So, but here's the really big stinger. If not the blind luck had anything else to do with it, last place Charlie Kimball picked first.
Right? I remember that.
Yeah, so Kimball picked first. And then Wade Cunningham, and so up the order. So by the time
it was weird, Cunningham drawing so early too. It was just such a weird way to do it. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I remember even watching that as how old would I have been? 16. I was 16 at that time, and even I thought that was stupid. I was like, this is the dumbest way to decide the field. I mean, these cars are set up to run a certain way based on how they qualify, and you can't touch them. They're impounded, basically, for this next race. They can't fix them until pretty much the first pit stop. So they can't make any wing adjustments. They can't retune the cars, basically. I mean, it was just the dumbest. I mean, I understand it made things crazy for a little bit, but it was just so dumb. I'm sorry, you can go ahead and continue. I just thought it was dumb back then.
You're good. So when it came to Will Power's turn to pick, there was only 3rd, 18th, and 28th remaining. Power drew 3rd. Then Dixon picked 28th, and that left Franchitti with 28th. This obviously meant that one of the fastest cars at Texas that Saturday had a massive track position advantage over the others in the upcoming race. That being Power, especially when it's a championship contender, Franchitti, starting 28th. So, Power actually wound up winning race number 2, and Dixon finished second again. but Franchitti only got to 7th. And there were no cautions. There was no time for Franchitti to benefit from a bunched up field. And now Power exited Texas with a 21-point lead over Franchitti. So Will Power had this to say after the race. Quote, "It was definitely unfair for Dario. For him to start 28th and me 3rd is unfair. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, it would be a fierce battle for the whole race. But to me, it was unfair. Splitting the race in half was fine, and the draw was fun for the fans, but it makes it that much tougher for a guy like Scott Dixon to come from 18th to 2nd. That's a heck of a drive, but for Dario, it's really unfair." Then Dario Franchitti didn't hold back his comments either, so he said this: We should have never been in that position to start with. To have a championship round and draw it out of a hat was a joke. It is a joke. We drew 25 spots behind Will. It's no fault to Will, but that is a massive handicap. Through no fault of our own, we gained 21 places, but lost a massive amount of points. So again, remember, he ended race 1 with a 7-point deficit. Now he's 21 back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So to continue what he said, that made me mad. I'm sitting there thinking I won the first race, but my emotion right now is pissed off at the hand we were dealt tonight. Then he added a quick whip. This was Las Vegas, not a championship race. We might as well roll the dice to see who won tonight. Which I
want to throw into that. When he says Las Vegas, it actually brings up a good point. I really think the 2011 championship could have gone a whole bunch of different ways. First of all, it started here. It started here where they basically kind of tried to screw Dario out of the championship. And then you basically had Dario and Will fighting the whole summer, and we never really got a full payoff. But it really makes me wonder. I feel like Dario ended up winning the championship in the end. But at the same time, I look at that and I think to myself, there were so many other opportunities there, at least 2, where we could have had a different outcome had the playing field been fair, or in the case of Las Vegas at the end, had things gone a little bit better. There were a lot of situations in there where Dario and Will just both got screwed that year because of IndyCar, basically a bunch of gimmicks out of IndyCar. And it's tough to say, but it's the truth. Anyway, you go ahead and continue. This race is end season is very fresh in my mind, so I have a lot of things I would want to add ahead of time, but I don't want to take away too much of your spotlight.
You're good. Franchitti then added that he believed the field, all 30 cars, should have simply been inverted, with himself starting last, Dixon 29th, and Power 28th, then placing Kimball on the pole, Cunningham second. He understood at the time that while IndyCar and racing is a sport, it is also entertainment, and that the draw did add pure entertainment, not a balance with its sport. Franchitti also believed that inverting the entire field would have been more entertaining. Obviously,
he would have been right. He would have been right. And inverting that field, that was a 30-car field. Yeah. That was a 30-car field that entered that race. You had basically some of... I just can't imagine what kind of race you would have had. You probably would have had a way better race than what you got. That second race running caution-free, it was not that good. 2010 was a better Texas race, I'll be honest with you. But you would have gotten a way better show inverting the field. It would not have been safe. It would not have been safe because there was, again, going back to 2011, and I have to mention Vegas again, there's a lot of drivers that were out there that should not have been out there. And unfortunately, Wade Cunningham is one of them. There's a lot of drivers that were out there not just in that Texas race, but in the Las Vegas race as well that shouldn't have been out there. And, yes, inverting the field would have been more fair and more entertaining, but it probably would have been a lot more dangerous. So hindsight's 2020, but I think at the time Dario's comments were correct. They might not have aged as well, but at the time I think his comments were correct.
I can't argue with you there. So to kind of cut some stuff out here, but Power, was obviously very sympathetic to Ganassi. He, even though he won, he understood how this could impact the championship without kind of directly saying that. Danica Patrick, she expressed her frustration as well. But she applauded IndyCar for trying something, even if it was a little gimmicky, because you got to get viewers, you got to have viewers to pay the bills, and she was a fan of anything to get people in the stands, but this probably wasn't the right way to
And
do
Danica
it.
should have had the right to have been the most mad because she finished second at Texas the previous year, so she was probably someone who had one of the better shots to make an upset with maybe in an inverted field,
Mm-hmm.
and she never really got that opportunity. If anyone, Danica had the right to be upset there because, like I said, Texas was one of her better racetracks.
Yeah. This race may have been a debacle, but it's also fun loss that this was Power's 12th career IndyCar victory that includes 2 wins in kart, but it was his first on an oval. Even if again, you lose that in the debacle that took place at halftime and how the second race played out. Rob, you mentioned Dario did eventually win this championship. He was declared the champion following the cancellation of the 2011 IZOD IndyCar World Championship race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway following the fatal crash of Dan Weldon. As the series reverted back to the previous race results, which was the Kentucky Indy 300 at Kentucky Speedway. Franchitti left Kentucky that day with an 18-point lead over Power. Franchitti earned 13 points in his 7th place finish in race number 2 at the Texas races, which he could have easily just walked away, with only 5 points, which would have left him with a larger deficit here. So how this would could have been a very large pivotal point. And Rob, you mentioned it earlier that had this race gone differently, and had other races gone differently, how do you change your racing approach the next week in the following races? Does Dario and his team make a different decision that costs them the championship? Let's say they wreck out on the first lap and they're left with only 5 points from that second Texas race. This isn't NASCAR now, or even IndyCar doesn't do this, but you win and you're in. Okay, now you get a points reset. No, this is all year, all season long, and even 1 point could change how him and his strategists thought about the next month of races, and to have that your fate of a championship come down to a blind draw. All right, awesome. There's 3rd, 18th, and 28th left on the board. Will got 3rd. We got 28th. We got a long way ahead of us, and Will doesn't have that much to do. I can't remember who started 1st and 2nd that race, but Will kind of walked away with that race, and obviously it was just unfortunate for him that the rest of his season didn't play out well when he didn't maintain that 21 lead.
Well, I said this on Twitter too, and I still think this. 2010 was the last great IndyCar Classic season of the IRL era, and then 2011 was this weird changing era where, we were pretty much phasing out the old guard. We had a new car on the way, and it was an entirely new era by 2012. It was a totally different series than what was there the previous year. The car counts were lower. The drivers were different. There were some drivers that just never came back. Wade Cunningham's another one. He just never came back.
Racing never came back either.
Newman Haas didn't. Yeah, that's right. Hinchcliffe was driving for them, but he took over Danica's ride, which was supposed to go to Weldon. But everything changed after 2011, and 2011 was just this. I don't blame Randy Bernard for it. I understand why he was trying stuff that was different, and he did a lot of good things. I still think him bringing IndyCar back to Pocono was one of the best things he could have done. And still should be the highlight of his tenure as CEO of IndyCar, is bringing IndyCar back to Pocono and getting more ovals on the schedule, which is what fans clamored for so long. What I still clamor for. But this was one of the races that I really felt like back when I was watching this at the time, I was so confused why they decided to decide it on a random draw like that. It didn't make sense to me. And I echoed Dario's statements. I thought it was a farce at the time. Looking back on it, I'm not going to go so far as to say it was as much of a farce as I thought it was back then, mainly because nostalgia kicked in. But I just remember feeling very strongly about how they decided race 2 at that time. So thank you, Josh. I appreciate you bringing into that. It was great little trip down memory lane for me and surely many other people. That's all we've got for this week's show. Josh and I have had a great time presenting this show to us, but it's time to look at what's in the windshield. We've got some racing coming up, and we're excited for it. I'm excited for it. IndyCar is off this weekend, but they'll return on May 15th for the GMR Grand Prix at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course. So that will be next week. In the 15th, but we got Formula E. Formula E is coming to Monaco. They're again full circuit with the Mahavir Raghunathan turn 1. And you know what I mean. You go watch Mahavir Raghunathan take turn 1 at Monaco. He does this. He does exactly what Formula E is going to do. Just ignore that. Ignore the whole curb that's there. They're going to take that curb out and make it a big sweeping right-hander. Just beautiful. And that'll be great. That race is going to be on May 8th. So we're looking forward to that. Hey, Formula One is back. We're going to go from Portimao in Portugal across the border, right across to Spain for Barcelona. For the Spanish Grand Prix, that'll be on Sunday, May 9th. The Formula 3 season opener will take place at Barcelona as well. Remember, 2 races. One in the early morning on Saturday, if you're in over here in the States, it'll be in the early morning Saturday, and then about 10:45 a.m. the second race, and then the third race will be at like 4:30 or something in the morning, I think. But then, hey, Throwback Weekend. If Fox is taking this all out, I don't know if you see it, Josh, I know you're not a wrestling fan, but they're going so far as to take Throwback Weekend into wrestling. Friday Night SmackDown on Fox is going to be a throwback presentation, so that's going to be kind of cool. That's going to be
gotta
fun.
love that the trucks don't have a race on Fox for Throwback Weekends. Instead, we're getting Throwback for wrestling. Great.
Fox is contractually obligated to air Friday Night SmackDown, so
yeah, that's a great deal.
Let's be honest. I hate to be this, but SmackDown's probably going to get more viewers on Fox.
It's going to get more viewers, but you're trying to build,
especially a throwback one. Everybody hates wrestling now, but nobody hated wrestling back then. You know what I mean? In the 80s and 90s, nobody hated wrestling. You have Peacock. I just want you to watch one episode of Raw from 98 through 2002. Just one episode and tell me it's not the craziest stuff you've ever watched in your life.
I'm sure it's the craziest stuff I've ever watched, but I'm not going to like it. That's
fine.
I can tell you that right now. And you know what? I'm not going to dig on anyone else, because if that's your thing, that's your thing. I don't have a problem with you watching it. I can just know I'm not going to enjoy it.
It's good entertainment. Well, all of Fox is doing a Throwback Weekend, so it's kind of cool that Fox is kind of incorporating all of their properties into this NASCAR thing. This whole NASCAR. This is really just a NASCAR thing. Only NASCAR is doing throwback, but they're being like, no, let's get everybody throwing back. Let's get the WWE. Let's get Skip and Shannon. Let's get Colin Cowherd. Let's get everybody in.
That makes it a little less special. I can't say I like that. I can't.
You don't like that?
I don't like that because of this. I don't like that.
I think it's great. I think it promotes the NASCAR product better. I think it gets everybody excited for the NASCAR product.
No, you're talking about other products at the same time. Why can't Colin Cowherd and Skip and Shannon just promote NASCAR Throwback Weekend?
You're doing cross promotion. You're promoting the NASCAR Throwback Weekend along with your other program. You're making it a theme of the week.
I guess. I could see this.
NBC did this. They had a Throwback Week. They showed old races. How is this any different?
NBC? You talking about NBC?
Yeah, when NBC had Throwback Weekend, they would do Throwback Week stuff.
Yeah, but they didn't cross over all their other properties, though.
What other properties do they have?
That's my point.
Yeah, Fox can do this.
You didn't have a Sunday Night Football throwback with all them up there.
Well, you're not going to get Al Michaels and John Madden. I mean, I could pray that you will, but it's not going to happen.
Well, still.
John Madden won't fly, and odds are he's just happy he retired. As much as I want to hear, boom, and Brett Favre could do it better, I don't know. Whatever. It's still Throwback Weekend, and that's what we're talking about because this show's almost over. Thanks for listening this long, by the way. So all three race series are going to be at Darlington. Camping World Truck Series will be on Friday night on FS1, followed by the Xfinity Series on Saturday, and then the Cup Series will be running the Goodyear 400 on Sunday. just as Josh and I have done in 2019 and 2020, we will be selecting our top 3 throwback paint schemes on next week's show. So look forward to that. It won't be a worst. Well, we might do a worst because we were talking before the show. There's some candidates for the worst throwback paint scheme this year. There's some candidates. So maybe stay tuned to that. Maybe we'll have to talk about some bad paint schemes. But thank you so much for listening to this week's show. We really appreciate it. We know we went long, but you guys love it. You guys don't complain about it, right? If you did, we'd hear a bunch of people on Twitter saying, make it shorter, make it shorter. Now, you guys love listening to us rant and ramble. So with that being said, my name is Rob Peters. Josh Roller has been my co-host, and we have just had a great time talking to you this week. We hope you join in next time. So for Josh Roller, I'm Rob Peters. This has been the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. Have a great week, everybody, and enjoy all of the racing that we are going to have this week.